Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys 10 tips to help you improve your aim in Valorant. As always, leave a like on the video if it helps you out, but with all that being said, let's jump right into the tips. Tip number 1 is to pick up a good mouse with a good sensor. I ran into a lot of players in Valorant who seem to have a quite jittery aim. Now this could be because of two reasons. Number 1 is that they have a bad mouse with a bad sensor, or number 2, it's because they aren't using their mouse on a smooth surface. I personally use Logitech's G Pro wireless. It's really light and of course it's wireless, so I have literally nothing weighing it down. I'm able to freely move the mouse around my mouse mat with literally no hassle. There are a few things to look out for whenever it comes to purchasing a gaming mouse for the first time. In no particular order, we have the shape of the mouse, how heavy the mouse is, the quality of the sensor that the mouse has, if the mouse has the ability to change its DPI, and last but definitely not least, the durability of the mouse. Gaming mice can be quite expensive. The Logitech G Pro wireless that I have costs a whopping £140 brand new. That's roughly $172 for all of you Americans out there. This is why it's really important that when you buy a mouse, that you make sure that your mouse that you're buying is gonna be a good one so that it lasts you a while. Sure, you could purchase a really cheap mouse, but you most likely will be missing out on like a lot of the features some of the higher end mice have. If you're not willing to spend upwards of $170 on a mouse, I would recommend taking a look at the Logitech G305 Lightspeed wireless. If you're somebody who's reluctant to pick up a wireless mouse because you're scared that there might be some kind of delay or input latency, I can tell you that with confidence, there's pretty much no input delay. I've been using the G Pro wireless for about a year now and I haven't had any issues with mine. I'll leave a link to the G Pro wireless and the G503 down in the description below if you're interested in checking them out. Tip number 2 is to get a good mouse mat. Like I mentioned earlier on, I noticed that a lot of players who play Valorant have a really jittery aim, and while the sensor on your mouse plays a big role in that, it's more likely because of the surface that you're using your mouse on. Theoretically, you could use your mouse on a wooden tabletop or smooth surface, and for your everyday activities, that would be okay, but in a game like Valorant, CSGO, or Siege, where micro adjustments matter, using a surface that is somewhat inconsistent, let's say it has a tiny hole in it, or it's just naturally slippery, that's going to screw you over in game. I'm going to be recommending another product in this video, the SteelSeries QCK XXL Cloth Gaming Mouse Pad. Link's going to be down in the description below as well. Now this is quite a big mouse pad, but this is the best mouse pad that I've ever used. I very rarely run out of space while playing, it's comfortable to rest my arm on, and it's easy to clean. If the version that I've recommended for you is too big, on the Amazon page that's linked below, you can just change the size to suit your desk. With that being said, that is the last product placement out of the way, so let's move on to tip number 3, changing your Windows settings. Also, this video isn't sponsored in any way, I just really recommend those 2 products. If you're running any version of Windows 10, go to search on the bottom left hand corner of your desktop and type in the word mouse. Press enter to go to the mouse settings. Then on the right of the screen, click additional mouse options. This is going to open up a small window with a few tabs on the top. Click on the tab pointer options and copy the settings that you see on screen now. Make sure that once you've entered in the settings that you hit apply and then hit OK to save the settings. This basically ensures that all the mouse acceleration inside of Windows is turned off, making your cursor movement on screen one-to-one with how you move your mouse in real life. Tip number 4 requires you to go into the description below and click the link that starts with donewmouseacceleration.blogspot.co.uk. On this page, you're going to see something called the Mark C Windows Acceleration Fix. What we're about to download is a piece of software that is going to go into your Windows registry and toggle anything to do with mouse acceleration off, ensuring that we have true one-to-one movements. Before downloading the file found on this page, make sure that you've got either WinRAR or 7-zip installed on your PC. Once you've got that, go ahead and click on the Mark C _Windows _10 plus 8.x plus 7 _ mousefix.zip link to start the download. Once you've downloaded the zip file containing the program, make a new file on your desktop and drag the zip folder into it. Open the folder you just dragged it into and extract the zip file into the folder. Right click on your desktop and select display settings. Find out what scaling settings you have applied, then head back to the folder we just unzipped. Press Windows 10 Fixes, then choose the one that matches your Windows scaling settings. The default is normally 100%. Once you've ran the regedit, you're done. Your cursor movement should now feel a lot smoother. Now that we've done all of that, we can boot up the game and move on to tip number 5, finding a comfortable sensitivity. For this step, I recommend jumping into the practice range because we're going to be practicing different types of aiming to determine your perfect sensitivity. Before we do this though, we want to determine what DPI that you want to use, implying you have a mouse that allows you to swap your DPI. DPI, or dots per inch, is a measurement of how sensitive your mouse is. The higher a mouse's DPI, the further the cursor on your screen will move when you move your mouse. There are 3 common DPI values that professional players across many FPS games use. 400 DPI, which is the lowest DPI value that we're going to cover in this video. It's commonly used by CSGO players. 800 DPI, which is the middle ground DPI that most players will use. And last but not least, 1600 DPI, a DPI that is commonly used by Overwatch players or players who play pretty hectic games. Being completely honest, which one of the 3 that you choose is completely down to personal preference. I would recommend starting with 800 DPI, then going up or down depending on how much you want to move your mouse to move a certain distance across the screen. I personally started learning how to use mouse and keyboard in CSGO and started with a DPI of 400 for the longest time, only recently to swap to 800 DPI while playing Rainbow Six Siege competitively. Once you've decided which of the 3 DPI values you want to use, we want to find out what sensitivity is your 360 sensitivity. We want to find the sensitivity value that lets you do a perfect 360-degree turn when you drag your mouse from one end of your mouse mat to the other. For me personally, a sensitivity of 3 and a DPI of 800 is what allows me to do a full 360. To find your 360 sense, position yourself in front of this training dummy, aim at its head, and attempt to do 360 turns until you find the sensitivity value that lets you do a perfect 360. Once you find your 360 sense, head to the description below and click the Google Drive link that links you to this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is going to allow us to do something called perfect sensitivity approximation. This is a method of finding a comfortable familiar sense that originated all the way back in the days of Quake. The point in doing this is to find a sensitivity that you're naturally comfortable with, meaning it's going to take you less time when you boot up the game for a day to get your aim on point. You want to start doing this method before you start playing or have warmed up, because if you try to do this after already playing, you've probably already adjusted to the sensitivity you had set for that day. In the spreadsheet, enter in your 360 sensitivity in the cell that has a big bold 0. Once you've done this, you'll see 2 values appear on the cells below. One is a low sensitivity and the other is a high sensitivity. In my case, when I entered my 360 sense as 3, my low sensitivity was 1.5 and my high sensitivity was 4.5. What we want to do now is choose between the 2. What I want you to keep in mind whenever it comes to choosing between the 2 values are the 3 zones that you should be using to aim: your arm, your wrist, and your fingers. A lot of players get comfortable aiming in a certain way. As I originally learned to aim playing Counter-Strike using primarily my arm, I had what I like to call lazy aim, where sure, I could flick to people's heads, but I could never get used to making minor adjustments using my wrist or fingers to correct my aim if it was slightly off. Stand far away from a training dummy or a stationary object. Strafe left and right while trying to track the object with just your fingers. Start to walk towards the object while still strafing, while trying to track him with your wrist and fingers. Then finally, when you start to get close, incorporate your entire arm. Do this for both of the values that the spreadsheet presented you with, and choose either one of them by using the drop down on the right of them to choose between the 2. This will give you another set of values to try out. Repeat this process until you get to the bottom and the spreadsheet gives you your approximated perfect sense. Do this every time before you start playing, and you'll begin to notice that if you're doing it properly, you'll end up having similar results each time. Making minor adjustments to your sensitivity every day can prove to be beneficial. There are a few studies done that showed that when you're trying to learn something new, you tend to perform better or more optimally when it comes to learning that new skill. The same could potentially be applied to aiming. If you change up your sensitivity minorly, you're proactively adjusting, therefore paying more attention to your aim and the minor or even major adjustments you're making during gameplay. I myself usually end up getting a sensitivity that sits between 0.3 and 0.4. You can treat the 1.1 tune kind of like a range, so in this example, I could use a sensitivity between 0.34 and 0.41, and it would still feel comfortable and natural. With all that being said, let's move on to tip number 6, and tip number 6 is to get a good crosshair. I've seen many examples of absolutely trash crosshairs during my time playing Valorant. To make this short and sweet, I'm going to share my crosshair that I find the best results with. Of course, you can modify this to your liking, but I wouldn't recommend messing with the offset too much. What matters the most when it comes to creating the crosshair is the inner line settings. My inner line opacity is set to 1, the length is set to 6, thickness set to 2, offset set to 3, then movement error and firing error set to off. If you're new to the game, I recommend keeping movement error on, as it's going to help you learn the timing of when you can and can't shoot, as movement in Valorant penalizes accuracy. The rest of the settings are up to personal preference. Tip number 7 is to actually practice aiming with your arm, wrist, and fingers. I recommend doing this in the firing range with the Vandal and the bot speed set to medium with armor enabled. Change up how close or far away you are from the teleporting bots to force yourself to use different zones to hit the bot in the head. When you're far away, use your wrist and your fingers, but then whenever you're up close, incorporate your arm. Do this shooting test for like 15 or 30 minutes before you start playing to warm yourself up every day. It'll kickstart your focus, speed up your reaction time, and it'll just generally get you into a flow state where everything just works. Tip number 8 is to pay attention to your movement. Like mentioned before, your accuracy in Valorant is penalized when you move. If you're a newer player, you want to have the movement error setting for your crosshair turned on so you get a feeling for whenever you can and can't shoot. Some weapons are penalized more than others. For example, the Vandal is crazy inaccurate whenever you're walking or running, but the Spectre is slightly more manageable and forgiving. If you go into the shooting range and shoot where it says practice under start, it'll spawn in a bunch of moving bots, strafe with the bots, stop strafing when they stop, then shoot for the kill. Again, do this for about 15 to 30 minutes before you start playing as a warm-up to get your timing on point. Tip number 9 is to pay attention to your crosshair placement. Crosshair placement is the #1 mistake that bad FPS players make. Good players will try their best to pre-aim exactly where they think their enemy is going to be before peeking or being peeked, where bad players tend to let the events of the game guide where their crosshair is going to go. On screen now, I'll have an example playing of the mistakes most players make when it comes to positioning their crosshair. And now I'll have an example playing of how your crosshair should be positioned while peeking this bot. Bad crosshair placement gives the enemy player a larger window to react and shoot you back, where good crosshair placement ensures that the enemy has little time to react and shoot you, as you should already be dealing damage to them. Admittedly, there are no real shortcuts to improving your crosshair placement. The absolute best advice I can give you is to line your crosshair up on the heads of your teammates at the start of the match if you need a guide, and to record your games to see where your crosshair was positioned when an enemy peeked or when you peeked and missed, so you can hopefully avoid making the same mistake in future. Just remember that in all online FPS games there is a peeker's advantage, so the person that peeks first is usually the person that will win the gunfight. That's implying it's even Stevens, where you both have the same amount of health, the same gun, and the perfect accuracy. Last but not least, we have tip number 10, practice controlling your recoil. In Valorant, burst firing is king. Shooting 3 or 4 shots, then waiting a small amount of time, then firing again is usually what is going to allow you to land your shots. Some situations require you to spray down the dude that's right in front of you. The only way to get better at spraying is to practice and to get a feel for the gun that you're using. Go into the practice range, hit practice on the bots, pick up the Vandal or the Phantom, and practice, practice, practice. I would say that the Phantom is better at spraying down enemies who are close quarters, where the Vandal is better for long range gunfights and tap fire headshots. Valorant does have controllable recoil until a certain point. Somewhere around your 7th shot in a spray, your recoil is going to become random and uncontrollable. If you need a guide to help you realize when this is happening so you can get more accustomed to the timing, I recommend turning on the feed crosshair with firing error setting under general in your crosshair settings. And that's it. That's your 10 tips to get better at aiming within Valorant and pretty much any FPS game, honestly. If you liked the video, a like would be appreciated. Subscribe for more Valorant content. I'm going to have a display settings and reaction time guide coming out next, so subscribe for that. And I'll see you guys in the next video.